And he said, now you go home and you practice that, and you come back next week, and we'll talk about it. Now, Sheriff McIlvaine, he was a big feller. He weighed, I don't know, in the neighborhood of 400 pounds, maybe more. He was the sheriff of the county for a long time. He knew everybody, but I had no clue that he played the harmonica. But what I found out totally amazed me. I showed up at Roadblock's place. I called him first and said, this is Danny Jones. Yeah, son, I know who you are. And I said, I just, last night, Robbie Penley was over. Yeah, I know Robbie. I said, man, he pulled that harp out and just blew us away, and I wanted to come and see you. I'd like some harmonica lessons. He said, well, come on over. So I went. I met Mr. Roadblock and Mr. McIlvaine, and he pulled out the harmonicas, and son, when he started playing, I knew I was in the company of greatness. Roadblock had passes to every major country artist and other artists that I'd never even heard of. He literally had passes where he could get into their concerts. That's how good he was. If he hadn't been so overweight, like he told me one time, he said, if it wasn't for me being so overweight and unhealthy, I would tour as a professional musician. And he could have. I've been around, and this is not a slight to Terry McMillan. Terry McMillan was awesome. That's who I patterned everything I did after. That's kind of who Roadblock put me on. But Roadblock he's probably the best harmonica player I have ever in my life heard. And I've heard a bunch and been around a bunch. Tim Gonzalez is an awesome harp player. He toured with us during the tours that we did with Christian Davis and John Snyder. Tim played harp sometimes. I played harp sometimes. When Tim was playing harp, I might have been playing fiddle. Sometimes we had another guy that played fiddle. It was either me playing fiddle or harmonica, depending on who was playing something else. Sometimes I played both fiddle and harmonica because the other guys weren't there, and it was kind of just a mix around. But I have been around and played with some very, very good harmonica players, and Roadblock McIlvaine, still to this day, in my opinion, I would say probably the best harmonica player I have ever been around. That's how good Roadblock was. Roadblock passed away. He's no longer with us. But Roadblock took me in, and he said, play me something. So I played Amazing Grace in my feeble way, So he said, we're going to build on that. So we had a lesson where he cleaned me up, and I was playing a very basic, and I was blowing straight. He said, we're going to show you cross harp, where you draw most of the time. So he took me, showed me how to play a basic Amazing Grace, playing cross harp, building on what I already knew. And he said, now you go home and you practice that, and you come back next week, and we'll talk about it. So that lesson was supposed to have been a half-hour lesson. Ended up being about 4 hours long because I loved music, and I still do, and I lose track of time. Well, he was the same way. And, 4 hours into it, I was like, oh, Mr. McIlvaine, I'm sorry, I've been here way too long. He said, son, don't you worry about it. He said, I have never seen anybody that was so interested in music that me and them both just lost complete track of time. Don't even worry about it. And he wouldn't take any more money than the 30-minute time, what he charged for a 30-minute lesson. He said, you don't worry about it, you come back next week. So anyway, next week I come back. I'm excited, And I come back and he says, okay, you play me Amazing Grace just exactly the way I showed you last week. So, man, I did, because I had went home and I had literally drove my parents crazy and my wife crazy and my brother crazy and everybody that came over to my house. I drove them crazy because I had that harmonica. Roadblock had told me, you carry this harmonica with you everywhere you go and play it. And I did. So I went back and I played Amazing Grace just exactly the way he had showed me. He said, man, that is fantastic. He said, you did exactly what I told you. You came back and you played it exactly the way I told you. He said, now listen to me. Don't never play it that way again, because that's the wrong way. But I'm going to show you the right way. So he started showing me. It was a little more exciting now. It was a little bit more beefed up. There was different breathing technique, different lip technique. I was breathing from a different place. I was getting more to the real stuff, lesson 2. And told me the same thing at the end of that lesson. We went on for 3 or 4 hours on that one again, Yeah, go home, bring it back, do it again. So we did. When I came back the next lesson for lesson number 3, he said, okay, show me that song. Show me the Amazing Grace the way I showed you last week. So, man, I did. Played it exactly the way he showed me in lesson 2. He said, that is awesome. He said, once again, you have amazed me. I've never had a student to come back that quick and be able to do it exactly the way I showed them, but you've got it. So he said, now, don't never play it that way again, because that's the wrong way. I'm going to show you another way. Well, now at this point, I'm like, wait a minute. He told me that the last time, but I didn't say nothing. We sat down. He started showing me again, beefed it up a little more, changed the technique on me again, showed me a different way to bring it from a different area, where I was, not up here, not in my throat, getting down, moving towards my diaphragm, but I had no idea over that. So I went home, same thing, go home, practice it, come back next week. Went home, come back the next week. Lo and behold, went through the same thing. Show me what I showed you last time. I played it exactly that way. He said, man, Danny, he said, you just keep amazing me. He said, you're playing it exactly the way I showed you. Exactly the way. He said, we're ready to move forward again. He said, now, don't you ever play it that way again. That's the wrong way. I'm going to show you another way to play it. I said, okay, hold on here. I said, this don't make any sense. I said, now, granted, each time I've come back and you show me a better way, but you keep teaching me the wrong way. We're wasting a lot of time here. He said, no. He said, you hang with. He said, I'm telling you, son, hang with me. You ain't got but a few more lessons. You're going to be ready to go. He said, you just hang tight. I promise you I'm not pulling your leg. You know I'm not trying to take your money because I'm only charging for 30 minutes and we stay here for 3 or 4 hours. He said, so just stick with me. So I said, okay. So once again, he beefed it up, changed it all around again on the technique, where I was breathing from, the whole deal. Putting it down, I said, all right, you go home and you practice it. So I went home and I practiced, and I came back, and lo and behold, if we didn't go through the same scenario again. And I said, okay, Roadblock, quit pulling my leg, man. Quit teaching me stuff I don't need. He said, no, you need to know this. You need to know how not to play. He said, but trust me, this is the last round. This is the last round. What I'm going to show you this time, I hope you do this for the rest of your life. Amazing Grace, beefed it up, changed where I was breathing from, moved through it. He said, now you go back and you come back next week and you play it exactly that way. So we did it again. I went back home, came back the next week playing exactly that way. He said, son, I'm telling you, you are ready. He said, there is a festival and there's a contest, Red River Dam. He said, I want you to go and enter that contest. So Roadblock shoved me out there, out of the shadows, much in the way that Bob Bethel had, and said, now go, son. Go and enter that contest. So I went and entered the very first contest I'd ever played in my life. Placed 4th place, Kentucky State Harmonica, with some very, very fine harmonica players that I ended up being friends with and getting to know and learning a lot of stuff from. Of course, from there I just went on and ended up, I was Kentucky State champion several times, Tennessee State, Indiana State, Alabama, just fell in love with it. Started going to festivals, not only doing harmonica, but doing fiddle. And it's just spawned from that. So I started getting further and further out of those shadows, creeping up out of those shadows.